First podcast of the new year, Tyler.
This is the first podcast of the new year.
Yeah.
So I'm glad we can do it in person. It's kind of nice.
I'm stoked. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, this is John Chung.
I'll give some background. I just started recently working with you and Anya on some shoots. And I've done it all for them. I've chopped a million carrots. I've separated cinnamon sticks.
It's going to sound like he's making stuff up here.
But it's pretty true.
But we've had some weird photo shoots lately.
Yeah. There's been some really, I'm pretty new to the world they're involved in. And I'm super stoked to just see what goes on behind the scenes of ad campaigns or whatnot. Even like this podcast, like the amount of work that goes behind the scenes is kind of mind blowing.
Too much
take it for granted.
It took us so long to set up today. But so those are the things you've been helping us with. But in your own life, you are also a DJ and music producer.
Yeah.
And on this show, I try to make it about what I call a full stack creator, where you are able to do all sorts of different creative pursuits and take it on for yourself. So obviously music is part of that. And we're going to touch on some of that.
Sweet.
We're going to talk about some news a little bit, which usually I never talk about on the show, but I don't know.
There's so much news out there.
There's stuff going on.
Look what happened this week.
And then we'll hit up the Canon R5 C at the end, which I know you will have no opinions about, but that'll give me a chance to just...
I have a strong opinion about the Canon.
I'll talk for a while and you can just insert jokes when you're ready.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, going back to music.
Yeah.
So your kind of career is like mostly live, has traditionally been your pursuit, and obviously the last 2 years has shifted that a little. So you've kind of leaned more into the
music production.
Production side lately. So I guess for context first, like give us an idea of what that looks like. What do you actually do when you're producing music?
Yeah, I mean, I've been deeply embedded in music for most of my life. Obviously I love music. I started off DJing. And then I guess through a natural extension of just like playing so much of other people's music, how could you not want to just try to make your own music? And for me, I mean, rap and hip hop is like always been my love, which is kind of weird because when I first started DJing, I never thought like I would be into that type of music. Mm-hmm. I was like skateboarding. I was super into punk.
Well, yeah. Whenever we're talking about music, I just still try to get you to talk about punk the whole time. I'm like, I don't know what's happening in hip hop. So let's talk about 90s.
There was a time when like I never thought I would grow out of like listening to like NoFX. Or
some of us don't.
Some people are still like listening to that type of music, and like for me, there was a time when like, my friends played in punk bands, I was like, I remember just even to this day going to like local record stores like Melodia Records, which is like, they were super into the punk scene, and like seeing all these like local bands putting out like 7 inches and whatnot, it just like intrigued me, and also was like, oh wow, you like, you can make your own record.
Yeah. Also, you've seen both sides of the, like real life instrumentation of music. Yeah. And now the way you work is like entirely digital. We were talking about this the other day, and you're saying you do everything on your keyboard. You don't have, by keyboard, I mean non-musical keyboard.
Literally, like you could just like, admittedly so, like, I could just sit in front of the TV with my MacBook and just make songs, which is like a testament to how far technology has come, Think about back in the day when it's like you had to go to a studio to record anything. And if you were going to record it yourself, the budget you needed was probably astronomical. Yeah. You had to buy your own mics, you had to buy the mixing board.
And the quality still wouldn't be great anyway, because it's going into a 1/4-inch Tascam recorder.
Yeah, you're recording in your parents' garage, with like a bed mattress probably to try to kill like some of the sound. But I mean, it's come so far today that even somebody like me who's not traditionally trained as a musician, the programs are like, pretty much foolproof as soon as you know how to use them. Like most, like I use Ableton and some of the, I would say like the learning curve for some of these programs is a little daunting at first,
Well, this is totally what I want to talk about, because like I am that musical hobbyist that never really got good at any instrument, dabbled in a bunch of them, tried making beats and Fruity Loops forever ago. And still at this point, I would love to be able to be creating some of the music for, I don't know, like, this show or for YouTube videos or whatever. And I know that it's become a lot more accessible. So that's a little bit the angle that I want to talk about it from is like, people that aren't necessarily going to do a full dive into music, like how can we dip a toe in and be able to, start like without, taking on all of the technical challenges, still be able to kind of create something like where's a good place to start? I'll just say first, I've tried Ableton and it is impenetrable. Even as somebody that kind of understands music, it's very challenging at the start.
Yeah. Ableton is to, I think, I mean, it's not like these programs aren't very like intuitive when you open it up, You're presented with like a lot of options, like a lot of information at first. And you're like, kind of like, where do I start, But I will give a tip and how I started. First, I want to give a shout out to people who create these tutorials on, say, like YouTube or Instagram, who do it for free.
Right.
And that's basically where I've learned like a majority of like my production techniques is just watching, like combing through YouTube. Once in a while, you'll run into a channel or a content creator who just clicks with you, whether it be like the way he's teaching you, or his humor or whatnot. Mm-hmm. For me, it really clicked in. I can't remember his name. He made this like short, and it was like, I remember it was like during the initial phase of COVID, and it was like lo-fi music was like huge. You go on your YouTube recommendations and it was like lo-fi music to study to.
Right.
Lo-fi music to cook a hot dog to, So, it was all the rage, You look at these channels and it's like, wow, this guy's just making a 4-hour playlist and it has like 15 billion views, Mm-hmm. So I just Googled, or I guess in YouTube, searched for how to make lo-fi beats. And, this guy came up and it was like, it was like a 5-minute, it was like, less than 10-minute video. So I was like, okay, this is good. Because, past a certain amount of time, like a time mark, you're like, this is going to be intense. When you, it's daunting when you're trying to learn something and it's like a 30-minute tutorial.
Yeah. I'm always trying to strike that balance, making my tutorials where I'm like, if you can't win either way. As a tutorial maker, you'll end up getting comments when it's 10 minutes long. They're like, that was way too fast. You didn't cover nearly enough. Like, I have no idea I still don't know what's going on here. Yeah. And then, you make a half-hour video and they're like, oh my God, I don't have half an hour to learn how to use this. So.
It's like an Instagram caption, People are like, I'm not reading that.
Yeah. You're a little doomed either way. Yeah. But, so I find there's value in both of them. And now actually the market for learning has expanded because there is great stuff on like TikTok and Instagram.
Yeah.
Like 1-minute tutorials where you can really learn something. Like you can actually pick up a new skill in just like a minute or two.
Yeah.
The guy who I still love for all this stuff is Andrew Wang, who does both YouTube and Instagram really well. And I'm just like, I'm constantly blown away by that blend of like entertainment and production. So, okay, obviously we all know YouTube's a great place to learn, but what should we be learning? So a lot of people listening probably already have GarageBand installed.
Yeah.
I've worked with GarageBand. I've used it for both like messing around with a few songs and also podcasts.
Yeah.
And I know some of the limitations, but like, who is GarageBand? Like, I don't know. Could you recommend GarageBand to people, or is it like too basic?
A lot of like, I mean, there's always been a debate about like this program's better than this one, or like this guy uses this one, or like, like Fruity Loops has always been kind of like, oh, that's like the, when it came out in the market, I'm sure people were like, Ableton and Logic are the more superior sound engines.
I mean, I remember Fruity Loops. Okay, what year? I would have been in grade 9, 10 maybe.
Yeah.
And I was like, finding free versions of Fruity Loops. And it seemed more like a game, like a video game to me. It was like the super like colorful interface and it made it feel really friendly. And I'm like, this can't be real music production because it's like, it's really approachable. Yeah. But you could actually make things that came out like a song.
Yeah.
And I didn't even realize till pretty recently. I'm like, oh, it's still around and it's real software.
Yeah. I mean, like programs like Fruity Loops and even Ableton and whatnot, I mean, if you know the program, making a song is almost as simple as just drawing in the notes, and just having a good ear for what's going on, I would say like, for me, when I first was using Ableton was known for its like time stretching capability. So like you could take like a cappella that was like a different BPM than a song and you could like mash them up. And the engine was good enough that there would be no artifacts if you slowed down or sped up the acapella or like the beat, So, I mean, that's how initially I first got it. Cause like I kind of got into DJing when like all these, like even guys like Diplo and stuff, you know, they all started out on the message board, and like, you know, music was like at a different time, you know, it was not at the Spotify streaming time. It was still pretty like limited to message boards and whatnot. You had to actually like dig on the internet to find these guys,
for sure.
And a lot of them did start their career making like these, like, I don't want to say god awful, but like, you know, they're pretty like.
I remember a trend of like Fruity Loops boards about making like happy hardcore songs, which is like, I don't know. There's just like these. There's so many niches of EDM, and it's basically people that just like get super into a software program. They're like, wow, I can make anything I want, and, which is awesome. I love that attitude.
Yeah. So to see just dudes in like message boards, you know, just you don't know, making like really great songs. It was just like, I mean, that just brought me back to like the punk rock days where guys would just do everything out of their garage. Everything was DIY, you know? And to see like, you know, even like you would hear some guy from Calgary, you know, make a great song that I'm always like, if you close your eyes and suspended your disbelief, you wouldn't think that it was made from Calgary. If no one told you, you would be like, wow, this guy's like, who is this dude? You know? And he'd be like, he could live down the block from you and you wouldn't even know, you know? So, you know, that like really like intrigued me into like wanting to learn how to use it.
Well, and we really are at that point that there have been so many massive success stories of people that really are using the same software we have access to, right? Other really interesting examples when I see people how often people are using phone recordings. Like they just pull out their iPhone, open up the voice memo app, hit record, and turn that into a sample is like completely a reasonable thing to do at this point. Like you can just collect sounds from around you and assemble it into something bigger. Which, by you, I mean, not me.
But I mean,
one could.
Even recently, you know, this rapper used one of the beats that I made, and the guitar sample was made by my friend Josh Merson, who literally phoned it in. There was a period, it was actually pretty funny. We met on Instagram. And I thought we had mutual friends, you know, so I messaged him and I was like, oh, did you play the guitar on like this, you know, have you played guitar for my friend? He's like, no, but I play guitar. And, you know, I was looking at his Instagram and I remember like in the car, just like browsing through the clips that he was posting. And I was like, you know, I could like make a beat out of like one of these clips. And then I got home and I literally just went like, you know, like Instagram to MP3, you know, some random converter.
Sure, yeah.
Or I might have just like screen recorded it on my iPhone and like sent it to myself. And like, yeah, I mean, the sound quality is not impeccable, you know, it's not like there.
Run it through food filters.
Yeah, but you know, you can fluff it up enough to make it sound passable, you know? And I mean, that's how far we've come is literally like you can, you know, the execution of ideas that you have, if you're good, you can like get them out really quick, you know, which is great. Like,
which is what I'd wish for.
Yeah. I mean, just think about how far we've come. I mean, like, let's say like in the Motown days, you needed like the session band to come in. You needed to make sure the drummer or the guitarist was like,
which at the same time is still my old man complaint about modern music. It's like I still love that era of like super skilled instrumentation that takes a lifetime of practice or takes years of practice to really
we've talked about it before where like you listen to like older songs like that, right? And for me as a like, I mean, when I'm making like rap or whatnot, I'm usually just looking for a 16 or 8 bar loop, you know, and it's catchy. But you listen to music like back then, you know, say like Prince's I Want to Be Your Lover, where it starts off this like really great pop song and then turns into this crazy like guitar keyboard solo for like 5 minutes.
Yeah.
You know, you think about the astronomical amount of work you need to just do a solo.
Sure, yeah. It's not just the amount of takes that day, but the amount of practice leading up to it to be able to do it on only one day.
I mean, that's like, I mean, I don't want to go into debate of real musicianship, you know, like, but you think about like a guy like Prince, whose catalog is insane, you know, it's extensive. And like every song he's putting out is like sonically different from the other, you know? And he's like playing it and whatnot. It's just like,
I feel like there's analogies to be made here with photography as well. Like, you know, I've done a bunch of videos reviewing software that uses AI to do crazy whatever you want to your photos. You know, you're doing sky replacement and relighting it after you've taken it. And like, there's so much insane manipulation you can do to an image easily now. Like you could always do it with a lot of effort, but now it's become easy. And there becomes these arguments in the comments about like, well, is this real photography? It's like, this was already resolved in music. Like it's not fake music because it's electronic.
Yeah.
Like people's experience of listening to it is exactly the same.
Yeah.
So
you open up this can of worms because it turns into a debate of like, obviously like when you're making music, you want to take like pride in your craft, and you also want it to sound good, but you also like as an artist, you kind of want this like, you want people to realize, like, say if you make a song from scratch, right? You use no samples, you play all the instruments yourself. You kind of want this recognition that, like, I did it. This is all mine. But then you also have this other idea where people are like, I don't care how it's made. I just care about how it tastes or sounds. You don't go to a restaurant and like stare intently into the kitchen.
Can I see your oven?
You're like, how's this guy really making my spaghetti? Like, is he really using like San Marzano tomatoes that he's crushing with his hand? And I mean that's a big debate. Like in terms of like creativity and like how you rank it. Like I remember when I got comfortable with using Ableton and making everything from scratch, part of me was like frowning upon the other side of music production, which is, I mean, there's websites now that sell you the stems of songs,
Yeah.
You can buy
which
like,
is, I think crazy. Like it's amazing. When you browse those sites, you're like,
you could go through a library and assemble your own. It's like a Build-A-Bear Lego store, but for music.
Yeah. And it used to be, I mean, you'd be able to access some of that stuff through, let's say you buy Logic. Yeah. There's a certain amount of preset loops that are included in with it. So it's like, oh, I got all these drum beats and I've got this horn section, but there's a few dozen of them, like a dozen for each instrument.
Yeah.
So anybody that's using presets that come from any big brand, it's like, well, everybody becomes completely familiar with what they sound like. But now with the online libraries of this, it can feel completely original. And from I think it was Vox did a little dig into this.
Yeah.
But they were just showing how many big songs are using like this one guitar loop from this stock music sample website.
Yeah.
And
a great example is like, I mean, Rihanna's Umbrella. When I first heard the drum break, I was like, what is this? This is great. It's like organic.
I love those drums.
It's an iconic drum break. But
it's so good.
I also remember the first time I bought my MacBook, there was like an iTunes, I think it was associated with GarageBand, but like I found the drum break on one of the presets.
No.
I was just like, what? This freaking song is like, I was blown away. But you hear other similar stories. Like there used to be a group called Swedish House Mafia.
Yeah. I remember them.
And they've made some anthems, and I believe like some of them have used like, just like a stock synth, which again, like you have these people who are like slave away, try to make like the most catchiest synth, and then you have another guy who's like
download,
add to cart, add to cart, put it in my my program that I'm using, add a beat to it, and like a hit.
Well, it's weird because we've also there's been a shift from the moment that this was happening, but it was all stolen for a while with like amazing albums like, Beastie Boys. I mean, DJ Shadow back in the day, like I think whatever the name of the album was, like the first Introducing was like the first fully sample built album as far as I understand. But like he was just pulling stuff that he loved and there wasn't all these copyright issues. So it's like, it's interesting because there was like a renaissance with it at one time and now where it was all illegal. And now we've switched to a new renaissance where it's all paid for.
Yeah.
Which
you look at the work that Shadow was doing back in the day, and then compare that to when Robin Thicke made Blurred Lines and got sued out of existence by Marvin Gaye's, like, but
okay, well, what was the story with that? What was the sample from Marvin Gaye? Was it sampled or was it just too close? It was
the interpretation, I think, was too close to Got to Give It Up.
Okay.
Which is hilarious because, I mean, when you dabble into making music, you realize, I mean, there's a million websites that'll explain it to you, but there's like formulas within pop music or certain types of music, right?
No.
Yeah, like, you when you're making music, you're not reinventing the wheel. Like, you are choosing probably a pattern that has already been harmonically chosen before. I mean, humans have been making music for how long? I don't want to say we've exhausted the amount of like patterns for a certain type of music, but I mean, there's only so much I think that sonically sounds good to a majority of people. Like unless you're like an Aphex Twin,
sure,
who is a genius. And generally if you're just sitting down like me, and maybe I'm a minority in this whole debate, sitting down watching like try to get through the new Star Wars making songs. There's only a finite amount of combinations you can use.
So I always found it really interesting. I listened to a lecture series about music history, and that there was a moment when some philosopher did the math and was like, there are this many tens of thousands possible songs that can be written.
Yeah.
And like, it was basically just like, if you look at, if you look at how many notes are available in any sequence that they could be put in, there is a hard limit, and we're going to run out of songs.
Yeah.
And I guess there was basically the revolution was that at that point harmonies weren't developed in the same way, and like chord structure was different. Like basically this was just like strictly just melodies.
Yeah.
In certain and there also wasn't as much like flexibility in type signatures. So basically there's been musical evolution since then. But I always think about that moment of like, if you're just sitting down with a blank slate, you're just looking at a clean piece of paper trying to come up with music. It's like you're always really close to many other things that have already been done. Like if you start humming, especially just a non-musical person out there listening right now, try to invent a pop song in your head. Just hum something that feels catchy.
Yeah.
And then try to reflect, like, how many other songs is that pretty close to? Because it's very difficult to just come up with a melody and keep its distance from all the music you already love.
Yeah. The thing is, you can still sit down. Like, I don't want to say like there's a finite amount of melodies or chord progressions you can use, right? Like, even to this day, I can sit down and you can always create something new. You can always sound new sounding. Even if you're trying to like completely rip off a different melody, it'll sometimes just come out in your own way, you know? Like,
I mean, the Beatles' career was built on this. Like everything's a knockoff of something else. And Led Zeppelin, so much of music.
And we talked about it before on a shoot or whatnot one day, but it's even like down to the instrumentation that you use. You know, you could take like I think there's a YouTube video where the guy plays like heavy metal melodies on just like an acoustic guitar, and they all come out sounding like Beach Boys, you know, like even instrumentation. So I definitely don't want to like say like there's, you know, like you're in a box and you have to work within the like the possibilities are like infinite almost, you know, if you actually like apply, you know, like you sit down and want to put in the work. But I mean.
All right. Well, I promise at some point I'm actually going to learn how to make music, and I'm going to sit down with you and you're going to show me how to use Ableton.
I can show you.
Okay.
I think I'm pretty confident I could show you, at least within the workings of Ableton, I could show you within 20 minutes something that would blow your mind, which actually blew my mind too.
In less time that it takes us to have this conversation, I could have already learned how to make a song.
You could have been the next Beethoven, but your time has passed now.
I'm gonna hold you to that.
That 20 minutes is done. I'm not teaching anymore. But I think, back to like learning and whatnot, this one YouTube channel I'll never forget. So in Ableton, there's like this one feature called the piano roll, and Fruity Loops has it too. That's basically like where you just draw on the notes, you know? And for me, like my musical background is like I played the drums when I was a kid. I went to drum lessons. But playing the drums is like, it's very like, there's no, you know, you're making a beat. You're not playing different notes, you know?
Right. It's not a whole song.
Yeah, it's not a whole song. And when you look at drum sheet music, it's not like 5 notes stacked, you know, like
it doesn't make any sense.
It makes sense to me. But when I look at piano sheet music and see like, you know, 4 notes stacked on top of each other, and they're not in the scale, you know, they're above, and you're like, what note is that? You know, like how, what? Yeah. And then you look at the keyboard, it's like, it's pretty daunting, you know, because you're going from something that's kind of like mono to like polyphonic voices, you know, like more than 5 voices, and you're just like, what? It's almost hard to wrap your head around, especially when you like go to drum lessons and you're just used to reading like drum sheet music. So for me, the daunting thing about making music was just like, well, I can make a beat, you know, I can put like a kick drum and a high, that's like no problem, you know?
Yeah.
But how do I create like a melody or a chord progression?
Yeah. When does it become a song?
Yeah. And, you know, that's like a daunting task. And this one tutorial was simply like, you know, like this guy was like, here's how to use like the piano roll to its full potential, you know? And he basically shows this like shortcut on how to make any, you know, scale, you know, like any like an A major or whatnot, or a minor or major scale, how to do it. And the program basically, I don't want to say like it does it for you, but it
kind of does it for you.
Yeah, it simplifies it so you almost like cannot make a mistake, you know? And then from that, you can just use your ears to like find the most pleasing like progression you want or whatnot. Simple tricks like that though, like it makes you realize like the power of the program, but also the simplicity of like, it's like, oh, I only had to do that.
Yeah.
And then, like, because I think for one thing, when you create is like, sometimes you get racked up so much in the technique. You're so much like, you're trying to figure out the program. And it's like, then you lose sight of like the idea that you want to create, right?
I've been there for sure.
Yeah. And it takes a long time to reach a balance between, say, for Ableton, learning the program and then finally becoming comfortable with it, where you're like, now I can like do the work on it,
Well, and that even comes to playing instruments too. I mean, like I said, I've tried to dabble with a lot of instruments that I haven't got good at.
Yeah.
And the thing I love about drums, going back to that, is that it's the one where I feel like you can just build this momentum. Because even if you're not very good at it, my ideas for what I want to play next can move faster than my ability to play it. Whereas I find on other instruments, you have to become very proficient at it before you can even imagine what you're going to play next. Like you have to know that all these chords exist before you think about playing them on a guitar or a piano.
I mean, a perfect example is like go to Long and McQuaid or a music store, and there's a drum set and there's a keyboard. I'm pretty sure you could just sit on the drum set and be like,
something's going to come out of it. Yeah.
But you can't, like, if you're not trained to the piano, it's not like you go to the piano and just start like ripping it up. Like, like
totally.
Little Richard. So definitely drums. I don't want to say has an easier entry barrier, but it's a little less daunting, I mean, a drum set is a kick drum. The bass, the bass one would be a kick drum.
You can always play a White Stripes song.
Yeah, you could take a pair of chopsticks and bang something out, Whereas like sitting in front of like a 70 like a keyboard and be like,
what do I press?
Like,
to stay on the white keys.
Yeah, exactly. Nice. Yeah. So what do you think about Activision being acquired by Microsoft?
Oh man, actually never talked about that.
Bungie being acquired by Bungie being acquired by Sony.
Yeah. Okay, actually, no. So
what are the implications of that?
That's actually all crazy. Let's just give that 2 seconds. So another thing we talk about offline all the time is games.
Yeah.
How much do you care about both of those specific acquisitions?
I don't care one bit.
Okay.
Which is weird because I mean I used to play Destiny a lot.
Yeah.
And
Destiny 1.
Destiny 1. Or Destiny 2.
Both.
Yeah. And it was definitely like, first and foremost, I'm like a single player PvE like gamer.
Mm-hmm.
That's what interests me the most. And Destiny 2, the microtransactions, like never really bugged me.
Yeah.
But it was just
I heard
like,
people complain.
Yeah. I mean, obviously like you're playing this game and they put the best content behind a paywall.
Yeah.
I mean, I could see, it's reasonable to be infuriated by that. But for me, it's like when your friends stop playing it, and a lot of the activities in the game require, cooperation of groups of players.
Right.
It's like I don't love the game enough to go on a message board and beg people to be like, please do this event with me. And then like even that opens up another can of worms.
I've never been interested in any games that are like really designed around raids and
so
I have no interest in it. But that's just me. I mean, it's also that doesn't really say anything about the acquisition being good or bad, though. I mean, that just is why we don't play these games.
Yeah.
But that's maybe a lot of the reason I haven't really had much of a take on it is because they happen to both these huge studios are mostly making games I don't play.
Yeah.
Like even Activision, I was like, I'm like, oh no, Activision, like they're huge. Okay, let me look at all the games they made. I'm like, oh, I actually don't play very many of these.
Yeah,
and this is also speaking as you only have PlayStation, you don't have Xbox. Same here, I don't have an Xbox right now, so I would be missing out.
Yeah.
But the ones that are weirdest to me are like Crash Bandicoot. That's super strange to be an Xbox title, and Tony Hawk.
Yeah.
Tony Hawk 1, 2 was like my favorite game last year. So no.
Like maybe you have more insight, but is it good? Like I'm speaking from a completely layman's level, but is it good for these companies to have an overarching, like, is it good for Bungie to have Sony standing over their shoulders now being like, I don't know.
There's like something,
does it work like that?
There's something kind of exciting about it in a nostalgic way, thinking about like console wars of the 90s. Like when we grew up playing Sega and Nintendo, there's something exciting about there being differentiation.
Yeah.
About like, there is a reason to choose one or the other.
Yeah.
And, I think in the PS3, PS4, mostly PS3 days, there's really this like, I had both an Xbox and PS3, and I didn't have any reason to really go to work. There's only a few exclusives. Most games I was playing were on both of them, and I was like, I don't really like. It just totally doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So maybe that's positive. That's like kind of the PC universe. Doesn't matter what brand of PC you buy, you can still play all these games. But it's something like kind of fun about like this about exclusives and stuff.
Yeah, obviously, like I don't like the older times. It was like, do you remember like the bit wars between like Sega and Nintendo?
Yeah, of course.
Like, dude, it was like we got 16
I was living
bits.
those,
but it was like as a consumer, you kind of want it dumbed down. Like it's very black and white, you know. Like Sega would be like, we have the only 16-bit console. We have a CD that you can attach to your Genesis that looks like a giant tumor, you know. We have all these attachments.
I had one of those. I had one that was like the Sega CD in the front, and it had the cartridge in the back. So it was like very late generation. So it was like the ultimate, but it was like 5 years too late.
But it's funny because like the console wars, it was that simple. I mean, the way they market it was that simple that you kind of knew the difference, right? You're like, Nintendo has Mario, Sega has the Hedgehog, you know? Super Nintendo is like 16-bit or whatnot. You know, you know, but now it's like, what are the implications? Like, you know, it's like, well, Microsoft now has Activision, you know, Blizzard, and Sony ironically has Bungie, which used to be Microsoft's, like Halo used to be like the Sony killer, you know, and now it's like, but it's like, well, what does that really mean in terms of like, you know, people mention, game service or live service or whatnot. But I'm like, to me,
have you tried it? Have you used the Xbox Game Pass for anything?
No, like I have the Sony the Sony PlayStation Pass, which is pretty
right. Yeah. But it's not as insane as what Xbox is planning. Like I tried it. I actually did it in a recent video to play a bit of Halo.
Yeah.
It's totally crazy that you can just like launch Halo on your Mac in a browser.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
It's like that. So you don't need the console.
No, you don't need the console. Okay. Yeah. But it that Wi-Fi playing on a virtual machine is not, I mean, so it actually worked great in my video. A little update for anybody that watched that video. I was plugged into Ethernet, worked awesome. I've tried it a few times since then on Wi-Fi, and like it's not good enough. It's not. The lag is just terrible. So
for me, I guess I never played enough PvP games, especially online, to know the difference.
And I never will.
It's like we had this conversation where you're like, do you know can you see the difference between like...
No. This lag is like playing single player controller, and like you're a second behind turning,
which
and
would be
aiming.
infuriating.
Yeah.
Which would be completely infuriating.
You can't really even play single player. Not great.
Yeah.
But big topic that the show's usually really about is a new camera, which...
new camera.
Yeah. So you're going to have to insert questions or jokes in between.
All right. I can be the comic relief for the new Canon.
You saw it briefly. You saw me holding it at one point. So
I saw the video you posted on Instagram, the preview.
Great. Okay. So
did you edit that? Is that yours or the camera?
No, that was the camera store. So this was a collaboration with the Camera Store TV. They they brought the camera over, and we did a bunch of tests together, and we shot some sample. Marco shot some sample footage when we were skiing, and we just like wanted to know how it performs. And they felt, and I feel too, that I'm the perfect use case for it, because the cameras that we shoot all our jobs with are on either side of this exactly. So that's the C70 on the high end, which is like the compact, reasonably priced cinema camera. Just below that is the R5, which is the it's actually kind of hard to describe, but right now it's sort of their flagship almost. Like it's got the best sensor, and it's what people use for photography, has 8K raw video, but it had overheating issues when it came out, when it shot 8K raw.
What do you mean overheating issues? How does that affect the camera?
So you could basically record for, I kind of forget the actual limits, but like as you would record, the amount of time left that you could record for would start ticking down as the camera got hotter, especially the sensor would get hotter, until eventually you'd see like, this next clip can only be 5 minutes long. Because it's just too hot. So that's improved a little bit with firmware updates, but it's still a real issue in a bunch of record modes. If anybody is using their R5, the ways that I've been getting around that is often using, if I'm doing something long format like this right now, I'm using crop mode. Doesn't overheat when it's in crop mode, and you still have the high quality 4K. Or you can also use the not HQ mode, won't overheat, or you just keep an eye on your camera and try not to let it overheat. It hasn't been a big issue for me.
Ice pack on it.
So the R5 C has a big fan on the back of it, so this just doesn't happen. There's no record limits, and it is really...
it was simple. It was as simple as putting a fan on.
I mean, it is. It's like a big PC fan.
The designers were like, it's overheating. What shall we do?
Well, and this is a proven technology. It's on all the other cinema cameras. Like,
okay,
it's been around.
So it's that simple.
Yeah, and it didn't affect the weight of it. Like holding both cameras side by side.
Yeah,
I couldn't tell which was in which hand because the weight was virtually identical, which is awesome.
Yeah.
Quality is also very similar, but they did some crazy stuff. Like, I never would have thought this was the solution, but they basically put 2 operating systems on it. So when you go to photo mode, it's the same operating system that you're used to on the Canon R5. If you switch to video mode, you get the full interface of the C70, which is completely different, like designed by a different team. Does not, like, you could mistake it for being a different company. I mean, it looks very, very different.
Yeah.
But is much more leans towards control, like your ability to control every detail of the setting. So if you're mostly a video shooter and you're working with the R5 a lot, R5 C, that interface is like, it's very helpful. Like you will absolutely appreciate it. So if anybody out there, I mean, my quick review at the start here is like, if you're an R5 shooter for the video reasons, then you're probably going to want the R5 C again.
Is this a professional only use camera? Would you ever just be like a pleb and be like, okay.
If you're a rich pleb, sure. Yeah. No, I mean, it's like, it's the best. It's the best everybody camera if you have the money for it.
Yeah.
You know, the only reason not to get it is if it could be too big for you. Yeah. That could be one. Or if it's just too expensive, which it's, you know, it's not certainly not cheap.
So the features offered on it, how long have you waited for these features to like come?
Well, for me, I wasn't really, because I had such good like balance between the C70 and the R5. They like kind of are only blending together with that middle one.
Yeah.
So for our use case, we won't get this camera. It doesn't really make sense for us. Yeah. It removes the sensor stabilization, which is awesome on the R5. So when you're taking a photo, you can just have a rock steady shot. Even holding it with your hands, you're not going to get that motion blur in a lot of situations you would otherwise. And in video, that means if you're like a vlogger, like you're just doing kind of run and gun, like just holding it, you can get much more steady shots than without it.
Yeah.
If you're professional, like if you're doing all pro video stuff all the time though, that image stabilization can cause problems.
Okay.
Great example is if you mount it to a car, car vibrates at a really high frequency, and that really damages any physical image stabilization. So like you've ridden motorcycles before, right? If you mount an iPhone to that, there is the same kind of sensor stabilizer in an iPhone, and you can completely fry it permanently by mounting your phone to a motorcycle.
Okay.
Which is super, like I wouldn't have worried about that. But if it's connected one-to-one and getting the same like high frequency vibration, it'll just, it's kind of vibrating against a similar frequency to what the stabilizer is trying to do. So if you do that with a R5, you're going to find you're gonna have a million problems. So
the features on this camera that are like new and improved, let's just say, did they ever become like a standard at some point?
So yeah, this is interesting. I was asking Twitter about how much are people using 8K RAW, which is like, that was the big flagship feature for the R5. Yeah. That's really what overheated a lot as well. And now it's been improved on the R5 C. They also have some new RAW codecs, so it can be slightly more compressed. I still think this feature is not being used a lot, especially by the responses I got. I mean, only a few people responded.
Yeah.
And I think they're only using it in really specific situations. The biggest constraint is that Canon's implementation of RAW, the files are huge, like really, really big. Yeah. If you're shooting on a Red or a Blackmagic camera, you have a lot more flexibility with your RAW files. So you could shoot RAW and still make the files a manageable size. But as it stands, you need multiple 512 gig cards to operate. And
which is why Tyler is also buying me this R2D2 looking card to manage these files in the future.
Yeah, we definitely need a camera cart.
Yeah,
it's gonna be a project this year. But so like think about your SSD cards. I mean, or drives. Like the biggest SSD that I'm usually editing on is only 4 terabytes.
Yeah, and
if you're shooting for an hour, you're gonna go through. I guess I don't know for sure, but I think you would go through 512 gigs an hour.
Wow.
So you could only have a few hours of footage on the whole drive with no room for cache or any other project.
So how many terabytes?
I mean, that'd be two for
Yeah.
4 hours, I guess. I don't know. Don't quote me on any of this math. Look up there's people are going to make charts.
You want to hear some insane math?
Stuff.
Do you know that the computer that ran the Nostromo ship in the first Aliens?
Okay.
I think the memory of it, there's a screenshot. It's like 25 terabytes. It's like 10 terabytes, which people were like, calculated today. We're like, that's
run an AI on that.
Yeah, think about that. That movie was made in what, the 70s or 80s.
That was the same time people were saying like nobody will need more than 512K.
Yeah. So, and then people were like, that's actually logical.
That's
that
a good fact.
Would be like that. Yeah.
But it's unmanageable for regular video editing. So anyway, I mean, I never think about the 8K features very often. They're just kind of out of reach for me.
And what application would you use an 8K for?
It's when you want to like really punch in. So actually a good use case is, it sounds stupid, but like A-roll, like when you're just talking, like when I do my YouTube videos and we're just talking to camera, we're usually recording that in 4K.
Yeah.
And then I publish the video in 4K. But anytime that we zoom in, so that's a closer shot of my face, now we're like upsampling and it is blurrier than it could be. Like you're losing resolution.
Interesting.
So if you capture it at 8K, you could punch in a lot, maintain that sharpness, and you're just not throwing anything away. And it's a very, very sharp 8K. Like this is much, even at 4K, this camera's sharper than the C70, like noticeably sharper.
The general population that's looking, will they know a difference between 4K and 8K?
No, for sure not. Like you, what do you have 4K TV? Like are you watching 4K on a regular basis right now?
Probably not.
Not even?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, so no. I mean, like 4K has been a really slow to pick up thing, and like, well captured content. It really depends. So there's different purposes of creating something. Sometimes you want like precision and sharpness. Yeah. I actually think good use case for that is usually YouTube. Yeah. Like when you watch a tutorial or a product review, you just want to see the product. Like I want to know what it looks like. Yeah. You want accuracy. Yeah. You're not looking for it to have a dream filter on it, right? Yeah. Like, so there's sort of that like cinematic, softer look. Yeah. Isn't so important. Yeah. You want it to be super crisp. Whereas like in a movie, movies are actually much softer. Like they aren't as sharp. The background is blurrier. The person that's in focus is like razor thin bit of focus. And it's a really different look. So it super depends on your use case. I like to try to make our YouTube stuff still look cinematic. So that's just like personal taste. Yeah.
I never really want to watch a movie that's like super high def, I don't want to see that person and have them look like real life.
Yeah. I mean, that's why
the filter applied.
That's why after The Hobbit, everybody didn't start shooting in, 48 frames per second. Yeah. Like it's an acquired taste and not many people have acquired it. So, so I don't know, what other like detailed things about this? One thing to know, if you're shooting video mode on this camera, the battery, it was really chewing through batteries much worse than the R5. Kind of don't know why actually, but you're going to need pick up some more batteries. And the R5 got worse than older Canons as well. Yeah. So there's been this sort of going downhill a little bit of.
So what's the expected battery life of this thing?
I mean, it just depends what you're doing. I didn't like run the tests, but if you're shooting 8K, I mean, you need to like bring external power with you. You're gonna just crush any number of batteries you have in your pocket. But like, I don't know. I imagine for a normal day you'd want like 8. Yeah. Like you'd really want a lot. It brings, but if you're just shooting it more normally, like 4K, the way that I shoot on the R5, 3 batteries is going to be like very comfortable for the day. So
do you think the cameras come to a certain point where when you tested it out, where you're like, there's a significant difference, like this is the one?
So no, I'm not that I'm not like super excited about this camera. It's like filled a niche for a bunch of, people. Yeah, no,
I'm not super excited.
No, I mean, it's like, it's going to end up being more niche than I think a lot of people are thinking at first, because the image that comes out of it looks exactly the same as the camera that I have now. That's a little bit cheaper. Yeah. And I just don't have huge needs for those other features, but I know there are other people out there that would want it. Like if you're doing a multicam setup where you want all your cameras to match and be incredibly high quality, it's awesome for that. Like, it's like a crazy streaming 8K streaming setup or just really good 4K. Yeah. It's also some of the best 4K I've seen anywhere. Like if you just use and also there's no low quality 4K mode anymore, which there was on the R5. Now it's always at like the sharpest possible look. So it's like, if you just turn it on and start shooting, it's always going to look awesome. Like really, really good. I still wish I had C-Log too, but you don't know.
Is the availability of this camera like can you just get it like at a Best Buy? I'm sure it's blasphemy. It's me saying no, but I'm just saying like it's interesting to me that these companies will make a specific product like this, right? That obviously like costs time and investment, and is like when you explain this to me, I'm like, this seems like a gamble for a company to make. It's so niche that it's like, why would you? Why don't you just make like 100 point and clicks? You know, like you're also like, I mean, to me, I'm like, photography, you're also competing with like a lot of people who just use their iPhone, you know, or whatnot. You
totally.
know?
I mean, that lower end market is just totally vanished. But I'm always very surprised at just how many people are buying these cameras. Like, you know, when I put out a video about, you know, the C70, like camera costs, no, not $10,000. Forget how much it cost. With all the kit stuff I got around it, I spent about 10,000 Canadian. Yeah. But super expensive camera. How many people out there are buying it? But then still like, you know, 100,000 people watch the video. Like that many people are interested in this very expensive camera. So like,
they're interested, but are they buying?
I mean, it's funny because like this is the whole thing I do. I talk about like high end gear and stuff. But I never have this knowledge. I'm like, how many of these get sold? Like how many people around me are buying expensive cameras? But
which is insane because like your perception of it is generally smaller than what, you know, people are out there buying it. You know, there's like games that have been like crowdfunded for 10 million years and people are still sinking money into it, even though it's not even in a beta. You know, they're like still like, what day it's going to be out? But like, I've already invested $10,000.
Well, I promise you it's not. It's not like that. It's not like that. But no. So I'm not going to pick one up. It's possible I won't even shoot with one again because I only had this moment to test it. But I do love the R5, so I'm not that worried about it. But the C70 is getting raw soon. So people might have heard of that, and that's going to be a big deal because that was a big differentiator. It was like the R5 is cheaper and can shoot raw, but then the C70 is more expensive and can't. There's always a bit of a like, you know.
They're so like, now leave out this tiny feature.
Now they both do it, and I'm going to be even more in love with my C70 at that point.
So at what point are you going to upgrade your cameras? Like what would it take for you to?
Yeah, I mean, I've really never been this happy with the cameras we own right now.
Yeah,
like they are just in such a good place. Except that the C70 screen. Have you seen how much it jiggles? Have I showed you that? Like it's just like almost broken. It's driving me crazy.
But is that their fault or your
fault? It is
fault?
Their fault. It is 100. Everybody is experiencing this. Like everyone that owns. So
it's a known flaw.
Yeah, it is a flaw, and Canon has never had an issue like this before. So other than that, those two cameras together, I'm just over the moon about them. Like they're such a good combo. So I've been super happy with them.
So they satisfy your needs for now.
Totally. Yeah. For now. I mean, I still want a red, but you know.
Is there a general time period when you like upgrade cameras? Like, is it every couple is there like a pattern?
When I can talk Anya into upgrading cameras.
I'll talk to her.
Yeah.
I'll tell her.
You got a picture on this. Yeah, totally. But no, I mean, I'm in no rush right now. I'm really happy with them. So. I don't know. That's all I had to talk about, John. Do you got anything else?
I'm just happy to be here.
Well, where's everybody going to find you on the internet?
They can find me. So actually, they can find me on Spotify.
Bringing it back around.
Yeah. I have a couple songs released on there, just like production credits.
Okay. Well, I'll link to them in the description.
Yeah, for sure. I have I'm in this record label called Hiked Up with just some fellow Asians, like who we all banded together with our love of rap, and we're releasing a couple songs. This year we got one coming out on the 18th. They can find my SoundCloud. It's just DJ Disoriental. I have like a couple mixes and some like older production stuff.
Cool.
I haven't really like uploaded like that much on it. The mixes are good though.
But your Instagram stories are hilarious.
So. Oh yeah. So my Instagram.
That's your main profession is posting memes.
My Instagram. Well, I mean, I suffer from the artist curse, which is whenever I would post like music videos or DJ videos, like you could put like hours into it and you'd have, if you're lucky, you'd have one person be like, that was awesome.
Yeah. And you repost a meme that you stole off Reddit.
Yeah. I could repost a meme off Twitter and people like, I would be, the whole place lights up.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's the conundrum with Instagram right now.
I'm sure we'll get past it eventually.
Yeah, hopefully we get past that soon.
All right. Can't wait till your new albums or all the music comes out.
Other than that, I mean, you can find me behind the scenes
here
with Marco cutting plastic flowers and covered in coal, climbing trees to put lights up. Yeah, you can find me there.
Sweet. Thanks, man.